Tonight, we witnessed a moment that Canada has rarely experienced in modern memory, a moment where the world didn't just glance at us, it listened. And it wasn't the usual politicking, the flashy photo ops, or the carefully staged symbolism. No, this was different. This was Canada stepping onto the global stage with authority, clarity, and strategy, led by a figure who seems born for such moments, Mark Carney. At the G20 summit in South Africa, Carney didn't just speak, he commanded attention. From the moment he opened his remarks condemning Russia's invasion of Ukraine and addressing the harrowing conflict in Sudan, the room felt the weight of experience and gravitas. He spoke of resilience, not as a buzzword, but as the very framework through which the world can confront cascading crises, economic instability, political fractures, and climate shocks. And unlike many leaders before him, Carney didn't stumble over talking points or rely on theatrics.
Before moving forward, do subscribe for Parliament updates.
To ask His Excellency, Prime Minister of Canada, Dr. Mark Joseph Carney, to take the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I will try to follow the Australian example. Let me start. This session is on resilience, and I want to join others who pointed out in the first session the fragility of armed conflict, condemning the Russia's illegal, unjustified, and barbaric invasion of Ukraine, the appalling conflict in Sudan, and our support for all efforts that can lead to just and lasting peace. Now let me speak to climate change. It's been over a decade that we've realized that past is not prologue with respect to climate change. In other words, the tail risks of yesterday become the central scenarios of today. Tipping points are now being realized, and I want to give an example. 2 years ago, the forest fires in Canada alone made Canada the fourth largest emitter of carbon in the world. We have the example of the Darwin cyclone. This year, forest fire damage forests bigger than Sierra Leone, to give orders of magnitude.
He delivered substance with the calm confidence of someone who has lived and shaped global policy for decades. Then came the defining pivot, climate change. Carney reframed what the world often perceives as a moral or political debate into a stark economic reality. Climate risk isn't hypothetical anymore, it's measurable, tangible, and directly tied to national GDP. Canadian forest fires alone made Canada the fourth largest carbon emitter in the world. The Darwin cyclone, the wildfire devastation elsewhere, these aren't distant stories, they are economic shocks with global consequences. In his voice, climate change became more than an activist rallying cry. It became a risk investors cannot ignore, a cost governments cannot evade, and a reality every nation must plan for. And Canada's response? Carney outlined a bold strategy that balances morality with commerce. This isn't about symbolism or empty promises, this is about building a climate-competitive economy that strengthens Canadian businesses while addressing global imperatives. He highlighted the power of blended finance, high-integrity carbon markets, and the importance of standardizing incentives to direct capital toward those most impacted by climate change. He even brought AI into the conversation, showing how data center development can be carbon neutral while stimulating private sector demand. The examples Carney used were vivid, undeniable, and impossible to ignore. Jamaica's Hurricane Melissa wiped out nearly 40% of the nation's GDP, erasing decades of fiscal progress. Debt-to-GDP ratios cut in half were gone overnight, a stark reminder that catastrophic climate events don't just harm people, they devastate economies. Carney framed resilience investment not as charity but as strategic necessity, emphasizing that early investment in infrastructure, energy systems, and supply chains is cheaper than paying for disaster later. And he did it all with a precision that bridged finance, economics, and policy in a way few leaders could match. The reaction was immediate. Analysts and political strategists alike noted a clear shift: Canada was taken seriously again. Gone were the days when the world's attention would drift to our leaders' socks, jokes, or staged moments. This time, Canada was being listened to for the content of its ideas, the substance of its strategy, and the clarity of its vision. Carney's voice brought credibility and seriousness back to Canadian diplomacy, a credibility that has been largely absent in recent years. Even conservative strategist Reen Watts acknowledged the long-term importance of this summit. These events rarely deliver immediate, tangible outcomes. But Carney's presence signaled something deeper. Canada is no longer defined by superficial stories. We are now a player planting seeds in global partnerships, with results that will unfold months down the line. From Sweden's recent defense and security cooperation talks to future trade alliances, this is strategic diplomacy in action, quiet, methodical, and effective. And perhaps most striking of all, the shadow of Trump and U.S. influence was absent. For years, Canada's foreign policy often seemed tethered to the whims of American politics. Not this time. Carney's speech, Canada's presence at the summit, and the reactions from global analysts all underscored one reality: Canada can operate independently. Canada can be confident. Canada can lead. This moment, captured in full at the G20, isn't just a fleeting highlight, it's a signal. It's a statement that Canada is ready to reclaim its place as a serious, autonomous voice on the world stage. And if Carney's leadership here is any indication, we're witnessing the first steps of a new era, one built on credibility, strategy, and vision that extends far beyond symbolic gestures or political optics. As the applause faded at the G20, the real story was just beginning. Because what Carney delivered wasn't just a speech, it was a blueprint for Canada's return to relevance, a roadmap showing the world that Canada is serious, strategic, and capable of independent leadership. This is the kind of moment that reshapes perceptions, not just abroad but at home. Carney's emphasis on resilience and economic foresight resonates far beyond the summit room. It's a lesson for every Canadian watching. The world is changing rapidly, and Canada is choosing to adapt, lead, and innovate rather than react. Investing in climate resilience isn't just good policy, it's smart economics. It's about protecting GDP, ensuring jobs, and maintaining the competitiveness of Canadian businesses on a global scale. The example of Jamaica's Hurricane Melissa is seared into memory, not as a tragedy in isolation, but as a warning for every nation that failing to invest in resilience carries real, tangible costs. What makes this moment even more remarkable is Carney's ability to connect with every corner of global policy. He speaks the language of investors, finance ministers, central bankers, and diplomats all at once. It's rare to see someone who can bridge these worlds with such authority, and rare for Canada to have a leader who does. Analysts noticed immediately, the Carney effect is transforming how Canada is perceived internationally. Gone are the days of being sidelined or treated as a minor player. Canada now has a voice that commands respect, a voice that shapes discussions rather than simply reacting to them. The strategic nature of this diplomacy cannot be overstated. Long-term gains often arrive quietly, months after the headlines fade. The partnerships Carney fostered, whether through trade discussions, climate finance collaborations, or defense cooperation, will yield tangible results over time. This is the quiet power of global leadership, planting seeds today that bloom into alliances, trade opportunities, and strategic advantage tomorrow. And Canada, under Carney's guidance, is learning exactly how to play that game. But there's more than just strategy at work here. There's independence. For too long, Canadian diplomacy often seemed overshadowed by U.S. priorities. Today, that shadow is gone. Carney's speech, Canada's contributions, and the global reaction all underline one truth: Canada does not need to follow. Canada can lead. Canada can shape the conversation on its own terms. And in a world hungry for leadership during unprecedented global uncertainty, that voice matters. This is why the moment matters so deeply. It's a turning point, a reawakening of Canadian global credibility. The applause, the analysts' praise, the quiet nods of recognition across the summit hall, they're not just gestures. They're signals that the world now sees Canada as a serious, strategic, independent player. This isn't about a single speech. It's about setting a standard, reclaiming relevance, and charting a course for decades to come.
And to every Canadian watching this unfold, there's a call to action embedded here. Leadership like this requires engagement, awareness, and support. Independent analysis, informed discussion, and thoughtful attention are the tools that allow a nation to not just witness history, but participate in shaping it. That's why platforms like Canada Today matter, bringing uncensored insights, behind-the-scenes breakdowns, and extended coverage that mainstream media often overlooks. This is where the conversation continues, where every Canadian can see the real stakes, and where the seeds of future global strategy are explained in clear, accessible terms. As we reflect on Carney's performance, the question is no longer whether Canada can lead, it's whether Canadians are ready to embrace it. Because the moment is here. The era is dawning. And the world is watching. Every handshake, every policy proposal, every insight delivered at that summit contributes to a Canada that is stronger, smarter, and more respected than it has been in years. Carney didn't just speak for Canada at the G20, he spoke to Canada itself, reminding every citizen that leadership is not about optics, it's about substance, foresight, and courage. And that is the lesson this summit leaves us with. Canada is ready, capable, and, for the first time in a long time, truly back on the global stage.
Canada debates.